Welcome to GlobalPolicyCast, a podcast which opens the inner workings of international governance through conversations with those who have shaped policy from insight to impact. Hosted by Insights International with its co-founder Arpit Chaturvedi and Suresh Kumar, a career civil servant with nearly 40 years of implementing policy on the ground. Global ideas, real governance. Welcome to GlobalPolicyCast.
Why do democratic institutions feel under strain across the world today, and what could it take to make them work better? In today's episode, Mr. Suresh Kumar and we sit down with Dr. Rudra Pratap, founding Vice Chancellor of Plaksha University, as we explore how science, data, and evidence can more consistently shape policy making in India. We also talk about what role does a university like Plaksha play in the Indian education system and how we should think about interdisciplinary education in the country. Before Plaksha, Dr. Rudra Pratap served as Deputy Director at the Indian Institute of Science, another great institution in the country, where he helped build one of India's most globally recognized deep tech research ecosystems. And he earlier taught and studied at Cornell University, my alma mater. Thank you so much, Dr. Pratap, for joining us. And my question, which I'm sure would be the first question on the minds of a lot of our listeners, is what's the vision behind Plaksha as a university? When this university was being ideated, what was something that you and the founders saw as something that India needed, and something that this university could directly address? Because I was reading your a very impressive profile, and you've taught at IISc, you've studied at the IITs in India. So what does Plaksha do that probably, what gap does it fill in that probably these, big government institutions maybe don't?
Well, first of all, thank you, Arpit, for having me on this forum. Mm-hmm. The question you were asking about what were the thoughts behind Plaksha, everybody in India is concerned about quality of higher education, right? The kind of universities that we had before the whole world realized that there is something called university, Takshilas and Nalandas of the world, right? The kind of scholarship those universities produced for the world, the kind of new fields they came up with, right? Whether it's economics or whether it's grammar or whether it's medicine, the kind of contributions they made to the knowledge of the world is incomparable. At least in the 1,000 years that we know how knowledge has moved, nothing compares to that in my mind. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that kind of scholarship which flourished then, you need that kind of original scholarship to be able to not just solve India's problems, but also to contribute to humanity and solve humanity's problems. Our problems are a lot more intertwined today. Our destinies are intertwined, no matter where you live. But you also sort of realize, I'm just taking a little bit of diversion, that somehow the scholarship in that era was able to transcend these boundaries very easily and think about time invariant problems of humanity. It's not that only trying to solve problems of that day or that age. Right? They thought about much larger issues of structure. Health. When you think about the kind of advances that took place in Ayurveda at that point, today we criticize that this is not based on the molecular basis that modern medicine does, or the kind of evidence that modern medicine requires. Oh, fair enough, but those are not the kind of things that were on top of people's minds then. That doesn't take away anything from their contribution, right? So they thought about health far more holistically than any system today that does. And that tells you about scholarship, right? Same thing with economics, right?
Oh, yeah,
Kautilya,
for sure.
Chanakya's,
Yeah.
right? You can think about the value of that work.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The
And
time
as
it
you were
was
saying,
done.
he's talking about economics, then international relations, and everything together, psychology.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. So I think that is the kind of scholarship that they did, which really, really, inspires me to think about what would be the 21st century version of an environment, university environment, right?
Yep.
Which does that kind of original scholarship. And when you think about that, then you do see that we have a lot to gain if we can do something like that. This doesn't take away anything when you said that, what IITs can't do. It's not about what IITs can't do. IITs are doing a lot, right? IITs have put Indian education on the world map. There is no doubt about that, right?
Absolutely.
That's the only system which is well known throughout the world.
Yeah.
But that does not say that, we have achieved everything that we want to achieve. Far from it, right?
Yep.
There is room for all kinds of innovation. There is room for much better scholarship in this country. There is room for attacking problems from different angles, not just technology, right? There is room for involving society far more in how we work, how we do our education. There is room for involving industry far more, right? In education.
Certainly. Much needed.
So there are several aspects which we see that there is tons of headroom, where we need to make advances. And one of the driving factors for, Plaksha was to provide or to create a university which is far more flexible, which provides a lot of flexibility for learning in students. You come to the university, you can choose whatever major you want, you can study what you want, right? You can have real immersion in research right from semester one, right? You can work with professors, you can look at complex problems of the world of India and learn how to parse those complex problems in bite-sized pieces, right? They are not things that are happening around us, right? So there is a gap, there is a big gap. IITs, when you talk about IITs are publicly funded institutions, they have a different mandate.
Indeed.
Right? They have to cater to everybody, and therefore, there has to be an exam through which you get admission, and that exam has degenerated into something which is certainly not what we as society deserve. It has degenerated into such competition to just crack the exam.
For sure.
That students are going through hell. Childhood is being lost. Is that what we want to do with our youth? And the answer is an emphatic no. No, don't want that, right? So there is a lot of room for improvement and for bringing new things into education, new thought into education, new paradigms into education, and that's why Plaksha was established.
So thank you. Very inspiring, Dr. Pratap. And before I hand it over to Mr. Kumar, my follow-up question over here is that you said that you are inspired by the way that Indian scholars were doing the most profound and fundamental research. How does Plaksha inculcate some of those ethos and because in my mind, is Plaksha more like what an MIT or Caltech, etc., is doing? Is the research, approach more like that, or does it have, a unique Indian element to it?
Very, very unique Indian element. We love Stanfords and Caltechs of the world. We admire them, but we have no desire whatsoever to follow what they do.
Sure.
Okay. I think that the world needs even better universities and better thought processes in its research than Caltech's and MITs do. Okay. We have, by virtue of being an ancient civilization, there is so much wisdom built into this culture that needs to come to the fore. Sustainability, for example, is a newfound love for the Western world. Okay.
Yeah.
Sustainability is so built in this culture. It's in our DNA. The way we think about nature, the way we think about planet, the kind of reverence that is there for natural resources, that natural resources are not merely there for you to exploit to the hilt before you know that it's too late to make any corrections. We don't do that.
Yes.
So those kinds of thoughts, those kinds of knowledge systems that are built into this culture need to come up and be put alongside the scientific rigor that the world needs today to believe things, or to be able to say definitely that, hey, this is the way to proceed. This combination needs to be done very thoughtfully, right? And this is not something that MIT can do or Caltech can do. And therefore, there is a place for a university like Plaksha to show what the world really needs and how it can be done.
So you're saying Plaksha has some structured methods to sort of marry these two things together?
Absolutely. I mean, we are still a very new university, right? But that's what we are baking into our foundation. That how do we do these things?
Yes.
Very well, right?
Yes.
There is absolutely no compromise on scientific and technological rigor.
Yes.
But there is no rejection of the body of knowledge that exists, which does not yet conform to that kind of rigor.
And one just related question. Do you think when you said that, okay, in our Indian tradition, we have really revered nature as a culture, which I think is fascinating, but do you think we have somehow as a civilization veered away from that culture? Like we call rivers mother, etc., but we have polluted them anything.
Yes,
so
right.
You think we've veered away?
So, you can see the contrast, right? It's not that we have veered away from our thought. Today also, you will not find a single Indian who will dare say that, oh, Ganga is just a, water. or
That's all right, but I am abhorred by the sort of pollution that...
Yes. So, you are absolutely right that when we started becoming industrialized, something which is not clearly visible to you, right, which is somehow hidden, all the industrial pollutants that are being pumped into the river.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I, as an industrialist, I'm doing something on my industrial complex, right?
Yes.
And I pump that water into the sewer lines or wherever, right? Or, worst, in groundwater.
Yeah.
I don't see it. And I don't immediately realize that what I'm doing is polluting Ganga. I don't see that, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, these two entities live so distinctly in my head. Ganga Mata,
and my
river Ganga is my mother Ganga,
and my industrial waste.
My industrial waste. I think that these connections need to be made by showing, in your face what you are doing, what its consequences are, right?
Yes.
On our livelihood, on our water, right? On food chains, all of this to be done. So it's just like, it's not like in the Western world, people are dumb that they don't understand if they use so much of energy, what will happen, to the environment, right?
Of course.
But when fossil fuel was being used and, millions and billions of cars were used for transport. A case in point is US, which never ever developed any public transport system, right? And individualized transport, which is so inefficient, right, became the norm of society.
Yeah.
Now, the consequences of that are that you have pumped so much carbon dioxide in the air. And now you shout from the rooftop that developing countries should take care of their carbon emissions. This is complete nonsense. So I think that it's because when you were doing that, you did not realize what are the consequences of doing it, right? Obviously, from 50s onwards, who thought that this carbon dioxide accumulation will cause such havoc for us? Right?
Certainly.
So there are things that we do that when we do them, we are not aware of their consequences. Today, that is staring in our face. And it's important in education to educate our young people that look at the consequences of what you do or what you design or what you put out in the market, right? So
very, very important.
Yes, a new paradigm in education for engineering and technology.
Thank you so much for that. Over to you, Mr. Kumar. And also, Mr. Kumar, do you think that it's basically a knowledge gap?
It could be good. Thank you, Dr. Arpit Singh. Thanks for accepting our invitation. And I'm also glad to hear that you have pitched in for quality education for Plaksha being set up in Mohali and Chandigarh. My association with Plaksha because we were trying very hard to get something different in terms of quality education to Punjab, and the run of the mill universities which have come up over a period of time are not doing or not delivering the kind of education we need in 21st century. I'm also glad that you said that you're trying to build a system which reflects fully on our past, whether it is Takshila, Nalanda, or Shantiniketan, but connecting the youth to the past, to the heritage is something which is very, very heartening to hear. But one of the things we realized as civil servant that the technology graduates and the BTechs and MTechs, which even IITs have been producing, or which are expected from Plaksha, they normally tend to become unidisciplinary. They only focus on technology. They only focus on data science, and the policy making, in particularly in the government, and the way after the globalization, the way imperatives of governance are changing. We need to have youth. We need to have educated youth who is multidisciplinary, who understands alongside technology, data science, or alongside science. Since you've been from the science background, they need to know more about our governance systems, our policy making, and maybe they need to connect the future based what we have seen in the past. You rightly said, even me, I've been in government for nearly 4 decades. We've always been looking to the Berkeley University, Stanford, Harvard. But never ever any discussion in the government's any state or even at the national level happens that what did Nalanda do? What did Shantiniketan? How was Shantiniketan functioning? How were those universities or those schools thought of? What kind of education they were delivering? Now today it's very heartening to hear that you are talking of Nalandas, but never ever we discuss these things even while discussing the proposal to set up Plaksha. So how do you inculcate that sense of sustainability, a sense of connection with the past, heritage, connectivity, and how do we see that the youth which comes up maybe as an output of Plaksha, it's not really unidisciplinary, or it becomes a multifunctionary, multidisciplinary. He does multitasking and he's able to connect the past with the future.
Right. Yeah. So it points to, your question rightly points to somewhat unidimensional view of education that we took, right? And, the kind of institutions we created, which were also sort of unidimensional. IITs excel, stand tall in technology education, but technology education, and that's it, right? They have humanities, but, they are not known for their humanities. They're known for just producing really good engineering graduates.
Right.
So our education certainly has lacked holistic view. And, all credit to these top universities in the world that you mentioned, Berkeley's of the world. They did do this very successfully, where you have all kinds of disciplines in the same university, and just by osmosis, you get so much. You don't necessarily have to enroll in classes. It's just how the university environment functions. You hear those conversations, you overhear intellectual dialogues, right? And that teaches you, that educates you. So you do need that, and that's how NEP, our new education policy, talks about multidisciplinary universities. It encourages every institution to think about starting other fields of study in them so that they all become multidisciplinary. And NEP is encouraging IITs to also start other schools of humanity or management or medicine, all of that. I think that this construct, again, this construct doesn't belong to Oxford or Berkeley. Takshila had 67 departments, and that was in 400 BC. That is 3,000 years ago almost, right? 67 departments of different kinds. It talked about, it did economics, it did war studies, military studies, it did medicine, it did literature, it did linguistics, right? It had all kinds of fields there. So this construct is not new. Again, we lost our own wisdom somewhere, right? Nevertheless, I think that having multidisciplinary dialogue on a university campus at all levels, it's not about classroom education I'm talking about, at all levels. The moment you enter a university and you start listening to all kinds of views, right? Philosophy, social science, sociology, political science, medicine, nuclear physics, it gives you a very different feel. It gives you a very different lens with which you can look at the world. I distinctly remember, my very first year at Cornell, when I listened to Noam Chomsky. Okay, he came, gave a lecture. At that point, he had just written this book, Manufacturing Consent, and Noam Chomsky is known to be a really, really good speaker, very compelling arguments, right? Hans Bethe, I attended his talk, Nobel laureate in physics, and one of the key pillars of Manhattan Project. You listen to him about nuclear energy, how it can be used for power generation and what are the pitfalls, etc. Tom Brokaw from NBC, he was a news anchor. He came, he gave a talk. And I was fascinated by the kind of breadth that I was listening to, right? I thought that that was what a real education should look like. What you do in a classroom is a minuscule part of university education, right? Education takes place outside classrooms far more than it takes place in the classroom. And as a matter of fact,
more so informally than formally.
Right, yes, exactly. And in-class teaching today, is almost becoming irrelevant, because if you are going to teach certain skills, those skills can be learned, through online resources. It's the dialogue. It's just, sort of getting students to ask critical questions. And having a discussion around those critical questions. That is far more important today.
But Dr. Singh, in civil services, the term you used, we are quite used to it, manufacturing of consent in governments and managing the policy. How do we get the policy the way it should be, the way the people who the policy makers want it? And you refer to the national education policy. Yes, I mean, the two good things about national education policy is the flexibility, the diversity in the universities and multidisciplinary disciplines they want to encourage and promote. But my experience and what little discussions we've had, and before coming here, I've had discussion in one of the IITs. There's a lot of resistance from the academicians, from the professional people who are teaching in this IITs, IIMs, and many other institutes of higher education, that they are not very comfortable with this policy initiative, that we should be have more of multidisciplinary institutions, we should have more flexibility, we should have more diversity in education, and try ensemble everything to see that education becomes more holistic. Why is it that the academicians and the professionals teaching in the institutes of higher education are resisting it, are not so comfortable with it?
That's Newton's first law of motion, inertia, in play in social setup. It's basically that, people get comfortable in a particular situation. It has really nothing to do with IITs per se. It is human nature, right? That we resist change, and particularly if things are working for you. It is working for you, mind you. It's working for you. Not necessarily it's working for the country or working for the world. It's working for you, right? And you become so comfortable with that anything to change you becomes, it demands a lot more work from you to start with, right? Correct. It demands a lot more work. It projects a future which is more uncertain. And those are things that generally people don't like, right? So the resistance is, you are talking about introducing multidisciplinarity. Here today, all educators or educational leaders are confronted with one thing. If you have to make room for new kind of knowledge, let's say AI, every single discipline has to now integrate AI or bring in AI. There are only 24 hours in a day. There are only so many credits that students can take, right? How do you make room? Something has to go away. You try dismissing certain courses from curriculum. You will see such, opposition to that. A senior faculty member will come and tell you that, no, this is fundamental. This is so important. This is so important. I have a very good friend, George Papas, at Penn University, UPenn, okay, in electrical engineering. He's the chair there. And George said that, RP, our problem is not what we should be teaching. Our problem is mostly what we should not be teaching, right? How we should take away things. So, the modern construct of teaching is still riding on post-World War II chassis of engineering education. And education per se, going and writing on the board and, students copying all that stuff is a construct from pre-printing press, that where information was to be relayed at mass scale. So what is the best method? This is the best method. Guess what? Information content of all courses have to reduce dramatically because information is on our fingertips, right? So then, how should the education change? Dramatically, to make room for new kinds of knowledge to be integrated. And I'm making my life harder. I'm saying that we need to integrate what our past knowledge system is, which is not necessarily yet in our AI, So to be able to do this, you really need to work extremely hard, get out of your comfort zone. So my job, for example, as a leader of the university, is to have this engagement with my colleagues, continuous engagement, in encouraging them to get out of their comfort zone, right? And do things which are very different from what we are used to. So that's what we are talking about, Sureshji. When you say that, there is a lot of opposition, that's normal. But, we have to have
I can understand
rise
that.
above the
I
normal.
understand that. There's more workload. Yes, more work has to be done. More research has to go into it, and the systems have to kind of change to adopt the new system. But Dr. Saab, you just refer to artificial intelligence. Now, there is again one view which non-technology, generally the civil servants and the people who are so-called policymakers, take a view that AI is creating a world which is becoming less research-oriented, which is killing the innovations, and kind of AI is being used as a brain and not really a tool, which it should be. It's not really the brain. Human brain cannot be. My take is that human brain cannot be replaced. But people, tend to use AI for all kinds of research, all kinds of innovations, which are not, and the research which was happening because of the human minds, that's not really happening. How do you think the youth is taking or using AI, or will be using in the times to come? Because AI is seen as a kind of a dampener on research and innovation.
You are right. For a large part, that's how it looks like. But these are yet initial days of AI. AI for the general public. These are not initial days for AI in the scientific community, right? It has been in the making for last 40 years or 50 years, So AI, the way it has panned out today because of our power to compute, is certainly a little bit scary for everybody. But I, as an engineering professor, as a scientist, I'm not scared. I don't see it the same way. I see it as a tool which is under development. We don't yet have the full picture of what all AI will be able to do for us. It is still initial days. So right now, the way this tool is being used, because it's a new toy, right? Whenever you get a new toy, you start playing around with it, and you look this way, that way, and you're not necessarily thinking that, okay, what most constructive thing can I do with this toy, right? It's basically the fascination with the tool right now, right? Fascination with the tool. Now, we in the education community, we have the responsibility to talk about it more seriously, educate our youth differently about this tool, that how you can use this tool properly, or what can you do with it, and how do you advance this tool. For example, till very recently, till what, a couple of months ago, maybe, everybody was thinking that, oh, the research is gone from universities because only these big four can do any research in AI, given the kind of resources it requires for foundational model training. Yeah. But it's also true that foundational model training is not the only thing. And it seems like while that is foundational, most of the work is after that in inferencing. And then it is coming back, because for inferencing, you need a lot of different kinds of people to work on this tool at lower resource nodes, okay, to be able to make much better inferencing engines, which means that research is going to come back to universities. Okay. So it's not that this is, Sureshji, it's just that it's initial days, and our mind always races. When you see a tiny problem, our mind is trained to think that, oh, this is going to end the world.
No, I agree, Doctor. I think these are initial days and people are trying to play with it, and we have our conclusions, which are not really the last conclusion. Something more
Right.
will emerge in times to come.
Correct.
But you
Right.
said the scientific community is comfortable and they are not really worried. They know what to do and what will happen. At the
Correct.
same time, you would also appreciate that scientists, experts are not taken into confidence, are not relied upon as much as they should be in policy making, in governance. That's a big issue when science, particularly, and I will give the example of agriculture. Most of the scientific recommendations are kind of overlooked, and the way the policies are made, those policies do not really become sustainable, lead to sustainable operations, sustainable actions, and something which we see, the pollutions, the depletion of water, the contamination of soil, all those things come up. Why is it then when scientific community knows, they are confident, they know AI in times to come will help, or the science in times to come will help to kind of bring in more sustainable development, that the policy makers do not really involve the science as are the scientists as much as they should have involved or should be involving in making of policies. So policy making, my take is that policy making should be changing and should be changing fast to take yes, civil servants are permanent, bureaucracy is essential. I have been a permanent bureaucrat all my life, but that is a granted thing, because you need somebody to keep the stock of the things and keep the corporate memories and keep the records. Those permanent systems and establishments are required, but science is which changes very fast, technology changes very fast, and these scientific community needs to be taken into confidence, need to be accommodated in policy making. What's your take on that?
You have put your finger on a raw nerve, I suppose. This is something that
I know, that's why you are here.
right, I'm very, very passionate about, particularly in the context of India. This is so important, right? And as you rightly said, that we don't take scientific community as much in confidence while making policies. Well, I mean, there is also, I think the scientific community is also to be blamed for this. We don't push ourselves hard enough. We are the kind of community in India that, oh, if you come for suggestion to me, then I'll give you a suggestion. That is a very passive approach, and I'm totally against that. Any country which is taking science and technology, in much better measure in ways for policy making, is making rapid progress. And the case in point is China. China is run by engineers. It's not run by lawyers and stuff like that, So it's for you to see what happens when there is science and technology in the policy stream everywhere, right? You can see that, you can see the impact, the way they think about 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and we can't think beyond our nose here, right? So democratic governments have another problem, that the governments are there only for 5 years, right? So everything is sort of short term. But if you have to develop advanced materials, if you have to develop alternative materials for electronics, guess what? It's a runway for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Somebody has to run that, right? It can't happen just by thinking about, okay, next year, what will you be able to produce? So India needs serious engineering commission, technology commission. DST is not enough. It needs engineering and technology commission that should be thinking about long-term problems, and it should be parsing that problem into shorter pieces. It should be completely insulated from, the local politics, shouldn't be with, political parties' ideologies, but it should be looking squarely on what India needs in this space over decades, and it should chart out the roadmap for that, right? That should inform your policy, and the policy should then roll out, so that we can achieve these goals. Whether, sir, as you pointed out, it's whether it is for just clean drinking water. It's a shame that despite being, independent for 77, 78 years, we don't yet have clean water.
Yeah.
Every single household in India today in the urban areas has a filtering unit, an RO unit, right? Why should it be? Are we not capable of doing this? If we had thought about this before the rapid urbanization took place, and even today, it's not too late. We can think about how the new cities should look like, what the planning of the cities should be. City planning is not a question of just building buildings. There is a lot more to city planning. So how will that get informed unless science and engineering is woven in these policies, right? So, you are making a very fair case that scientists, engineers, technologists, they must be mainstream in policy making, right? They should be an integral part of it. And if they say something that you don't like as a bureaucrat or as a minister, you shouldn't shut them up. You should learn how to listen to them.
Yes, I agree. I think the bureaucrats are not the policy makers. The people from the politics who get elected to the governments and who form the governments are policy makers. True. I think time has we've reached a stage in our country, particularly in India, that where policy making has to be more evidence based, more science based, data based. But for that, we need to build the capacity of both the civil servants, the senior managers of the government, and senior policy makers in the government. That capacity is an issue. Over to you, Arpit.
I was just thinking, thank you, Mr. Kumar and Dr. Pratap. I was also thinking, building on what Dr. Pratap just said, that it is also perhaps quite necessary for scientists and engineers to be well educated on public policy and to be able to think in those terms rather than just waiting for a mandate to come from the government side that you have to work on these things, but also to creatively think that, okay, this is a particular problem and I cannot simply think about it from a technical perspective, but there's going to be a socio-political and economic element involved in this, and there has to be some sort of a training around that as well.
Arpit, if I may interrupt you, I may interrupt you. What's happening is, again, because most of our institutes, most of our government departments function as a silos. They are not really taking into account the multiple ways of doing things, the multidisciplinary approach. Take the example of as I was mentioning to you before our discussion started, the Fresno University, the UC Davis University here in California, USA, they all have School of Public Policies. So all agriculture scientists are learning public policy. It is important for them to learn computing. It is important for them to learn business management. It is important for them to learn public policy. But when I went back last time also and spoke to a Vice Chancellor of Agriculture University, no sir, this is not the mandate for the Agriculture University. Why should an agriculture university, or for that matter any other university, not be teaching public policies?
They should.
Business administration, or for that computer. We need more use of computer and computing and information technology in agriculture. So
absolutely,
get built into the policy making once our education system changes. Dr. Pratap.
Well, we saw a really good evidence of what it can do when these different segments come together and you have sort of data-driven or evidence-based policy making during COVID in India. So many departments came together, right? Scientists, doctors, medicine community, and researchers from computer science, math for those models and predictions.
But largely, I must admit, Doctor, it was largely driven by experts. I was there during those days in Punjab, India, but it was largely driven by expertise, and that is where there was a greater realization that we need to involve experts, more experts in policy making than what we've been doing in the past.
Exactly. So there is a clear evidence that what it can deliver when you involve these different segments in policy making. I think that has been the COVID work in this country has been a singular, outstanding success, of bringing these different stakeholders together and working together. Right? It has shown to the whole world, not just to India. So there is certainly a lot of room for this, and you are right that we should not be waiting for the government to come and say that, okay, ask your opinion. We should be taking proactive stand, right? So at Plaksha, we certainly have a very active discussion on starting a policy school, for technology policy. That is something that we think we can contribute more meaningfully to, right?
Yeah.
Technology policy. And, there isn't anything in this country so far which is serious enough, for tech policy research.
Yeah.
Today, we are in such situation where you can make very realistic simulations of what the impact of a policy would be.
Yes.
Most of the decisions in this country we take are based on some sort of gut feel rather than evidence, or data, right? But now we can do these things more seriously by looking at the impact of a policy intervention before actually it happens, right? You can do scenario studies.
Yeah.
You are from economics, this, right? That economic decisions, we can run various kinds of experiments in a model to show that which policy intervention is likely to lead to the best results, right? So those things we do intend to do here. We have economists, we have philosophers here, we have social scientists, and of course, plenty of technologists. So we think that we'll put our heads together to create a policy institute.
I actually want to bring back our conversation to something we were discussing a while back that was around artificial intelligence. And my question is that, recently I gave a lecture at IIT Madras on going beyond the obvious in AI and going beyond the obvious in AI governance, because every second day there is some person like Yuval Noah Harari would get up and say that, okay, AI is dangerous, it brings in authoritarianism. Somebody else says that AI is dangerous because it's going to bring in a lot of job losses. Some people say that it's going to be a fabulous thing. Beyond the obvious, I'm just curious as to what you think are the upsides and downsides of artificial intelligence. Like, what is your view on how it's going to change things? Right now, as you said, it's a toy probably, but what's like the real potential for a country like India?
Okay, so that is something that we have been discussing very seriously, that what is the potential for a country like India? And for a country like India, the potential is huge. Let me just capture that in sort of one or two sentences. The productivity gains that you can do with AI in every single sphere of human endeavor, right? It doesn't matter whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's agriculture, whether it's energy, it doesn't matter, right? In every area.
Yeah.
The productivity of human beings in India is very low, right? And one of the reasons is that we do not yet supplement or augment our ability with technology as much as it is possible to do.
Agriculture being a case in point. Yeah.
Yes, everything, not just agriculture. Take education, right? Take education or take healthcare.
Yeah.
Healthcare and education stand out in one way that they have certain things in commonality. What you need is quality delivery at a huge scale, right?
Absolutely.
In India. And you realize that 70-80% of our population does not have access to quality healthcare. It does not have access to quality education.
Yeah.
Right? So if you only depend on the existing expertise for these areas, then you won't be able to do it anyway, right? Let's say that if we were able to fast forward somehow and manufacture or create, 10 million doctors, okay, 10 million really good doctors, and a million hospitals to accommodate them, then you could do this, right? But you also know that economically it's an impossibility.
Yeah.
So, but if you use AI tools with the same doctors, with the same hospitals,
Yeah.
we can reach out far more population, right? Far more clientele. So I think that using AI effectively for our productivity gain,
Yes.
whether it's Anganwadi workers or whether it's, the top neurosurgeon in Delhi, whatever it is, everywhere there is room for productivity gains anywhere from, 10 times to 100 times, right?
Absolutely.
If we can do that, we will be in really good shape, right? So that's where a large gain is to be had in India.
Yes.
Okay. For example, at our university, we are looking at how do we do MSMEs? How do we help MSMEs with AI to take their productivity 5x? Their productivity in India, MSME productivity per employed person is about 18% of what the advanced world does.
Yes.
18%. You have so much of headroom.
Yeah.
What does it take? Let's take from 18% to 36%, first, right? Double it and then triple it, 4 times. We have ways to go. These interventions can be done today. You don't need to wait for some other technology to mature, come, nothing. With existing.
I have a very naive question before I hand it to Mr. Kumar. That I come from an glass manufacturing family, Firozabad, as MSME as it gets. And I see that there's, except for probably 2 factories which are automated in the sense of what automation was 30 years ago, nobody knows what they can do with AI beyond just writing emails from ChatGPT. So
exactly,
how do we do it? Like, what if you were to give an idea? How can a factory in Firozabad use AI? I don't know.
Right. So that's what our faculty members are right now engaged in studying. See, there are 2 ends to, if you take manufacturing sector, right? There is input. There is input, right? And input cost, let's say, because that includes energy as well, and raw materials and human resources. And then there is this output, right? And there is, in between, there is this thing called time. Over what time you are able to do this, right? In the input, there is so much room for reducing input cost by optimization. There is no optimization in MSMEs. Okay.
Yeah.
It's only what the owner feels that, oh, I can, negotiate here and reduce. No, but that's not the only thing. Energy cost, your energy cost, your supply chain.
Tremendous. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where AI has such huge potential. Right? And on the output, you have certain market that you are familiar with, and then you try to be just in that market. But hey, guess what? There is a whole world out there, which is your market that you may not be even aware of.
Yeah.
So competition analysis, competitive cost analysis, optimization, right, of supply chains on the downstream, right? On sales, marketing, all of that, right?
Yes.
This MSMEs by themselves cannot do, right? They just have the bandwidth, and that's why they haven't done.
Yeah.
So this is where I think AI has such huge role to play.
Yeah.
If we create agents specifically for these particular sectors, segment the sectors.
Be transformational, that would be.
Exactly. Precisely. So there is so much room there. And same goes with agriculture, right? There is so much to gain
But
As a
Dr. Singh, if I may interrupt you, you see, similar is the position in Ludhiana, Punjab, whether it is hosiery industry, whether it is
right.
leather industry, and all similar SMEs unit in Ludhiana. Thing is, when you discuss with them whether about automation or to discuss with them about the clean technologies, which we've been talking to them in the last couple of months, they always come up whether technology is affordable, whether it will require
Yes,
additional costs,
yes, yes.
affordability. Because MSME do not really intend to make more investments. They do not have money. So they want probably piggyback. Either you give more subsidies or more incentives, or you come out with a cheaper version of technologies and cheaper versions of automations. So how do we deal with this affordability issue in introduction, in infusing more technology, more AI into MSME?
This is precisely where I think these other stakeholders like universities and government need to be involved, right? Look, our finance minister announced that there will be, I don't know, 1,000 crore or something just specifically for MSME equity fund has been allocated in this budget, right? Government is very keen to help MSME. They know that they are the engines of growth. They account for 50% of our exports, right? They are 30% of our GDP. Just imagine if they double their productivity, what we can get. So if we put the value proposition by calculation to the government that, hey, if you invest 5,000 crores, what you are going to get in return is 50,000 crores. Which government will be stupid enough not to invest that 5,000 crores, right? But it has to be backed by real data and evidence. That, okay, see, this is the pilot, we can do this. MSMEs, they can't afford this tool. They're not going to invest upfront in this tool. So is there a way that you give them certain credit, right, and take the money back much later? Here we are giving incentives tax free for certain companies up to 2047, right? Zero interest. And your own MSMEs, why wouldn't you do that? So I think that there is certainly room to do this creatively, right? And not pass the burden all on MSMEs, which are always, cash strapped, right?
But Dr. Singh, you'll also appreciate while incentives are welcome, subsidies are welcome, maybe over time we'll have cleaner technologies and cheaper version or affordable versions of technology, including AI. But there is no really what we say is exactly implemented professional code for MSMEs. Over a long period, we have ignored this sector and not really come out with any regulations, any professional code, the way these MSMEs should conduct themselves, way they should invest, the way they should not be doing something with they should, what we in common language, in bureaucratic language, there are no do's and don'ts for them. Whatever they could do, they possibly done. The way hosiery industry, or for that matter, glass industry in Firozabad have come up, they've come up on their own. This is kind of a historic or a heritage,
Right.
heritage industries. The forefathers had the talent, so the next generation also got into the same business, and the same business is going somewhere. Some industries have updated and modernized themselves, others have not done it, and they're going in the traditional way. Should the government not be coming up with a policy or a professional code for MSMEs?
I'm sure that the government is at it because now MSMEs are squarely in focus. Everybody understands that they are the engine of growth, right? And therefore it is in focus. Because MSMEs are such a diffused industry, right? And starting from mom and pop shops to somewhat organized MSMEs, and the sheer number of them is huge, right? From data point of view, government, I don't think that the government had all the data, but now we do, right? Now we at least know that so many MSMEs exist. Now there are MSME bodies, right? Their own societies, so to speak. So we are working with them, by the way. We are working with them to reach out to these companies and take a few as a pilot. Okay. And we are calling this program Mesmerize, MSME Rise.
Oh, okay.
That sounds very good.
So
that's come from Punjab also.
Yes, it's from Punjab. So from Ludhiana and from Mohali, that's where we are doing the pilots.
Okay.
Okay, these are the places we are doing the pilots. So, it is certainly now that more and more data is coming from MSMEs, and it is becoming a structured industrial enterprise, right? More structured in terms of government's interaction with them, right? So now governments can look at these units far more carefully and look at who is producing what, and what kind of help they need. Punjab government today is very active on this. They want to do many things the same. So we are hoping that from science and technology perspective, with AI, we can help them tremendously in boosting their productivity.
But Doctor, one of the bottlenecks we had realized earlier was that these MSMEs were not forthcoming and they were not sharing the data. They were not discussing their operational details, the technological details, what kind of a technology, what kind of systems they are using. They were very, very skeptical about government interventions and government seeking data from them. Do you think they're sharing the data now? They're coming out with the truth and we'll be able to deal with them in a manner that they are not displaced or harmed in any manner, but instead their efficiency, their productivity this is what you're talking about, taking it to 5x. Now we are able to help them in a manner that their productivity will rise. But there still must be, you must be realizing that there's still a hesitation on most of these MSMEs who are smaller, who are family based, or who are traditional. They don't intend to share or tell the governments, at least, not really us. Maybe in the private sector, as a private entity, we may ask them some information, they may give us. But the governments are not still having. My doubt is that my guess is the government still do not have as much information as in the government should be available with the government to make a proper policy, to take a correct decision, to take a decision which is really can be operationalized in an effective manner.
Yeah, you summarized it very well, and the reason for that is there is no trust. There is a trust deficit. If you are government, if you are coming to me, you should be coming to help me. But I see it, you coming to punish me, that you are just going to find out what wrong things I'm doing. And that's how it has been, unfortunately, right? So government as being an enabler to government being just overseer or punisher, or law enforcer alone. This is the gap.
But don't you think responsibility? Don't you think, Doctor, that's a responsibility of this building the trust, bridging the gap, which communication gap or trust deficit we have core MSME sector? These regulators, particularly the Pollution Control Board, the department of factories, the factories inspectors, and the inspectors from the Industrial Dispute Department, Industrial Dispute Settlement or Labor Department, those people should go with a positive outlook, telling them we are here to help you, we are not here to punish you. And that is the responsibility or the task of trust building or trust bridging the trust deficit lies with the regulators, not really with the government administrative departments.
Well, I mean, regulators work with the government departments, right? So it is, I think that the government has realized this. At least the central government is making policies today which are far more supportive policies, and they are sounding more and more friendly, right? More and more citizen friendly. And it has to be like that. I think that for way too long, we have lived with the legacy of English or the British government, which was here just to exploit you. Yes. Right? Somehow that continued, that legacy continued. Today you are a bureaucrat, something I must say, because I've got the opportunity to say here.
Yeah.
IAS officers, right? IAS officers are paid by the citizens of this country. Their salary comes from the citizen of this country, right? But as a citizen, when I go to an IAS officer's office, I'm almost standing with my hand folded that, sir, please, mercy on me, right? It's just the opposite. Who should be asking for mercy, right? Who is paying for salary? But that's
the age-old MyBab system will not work anymore now. The age-old MyBab system will have to be discontinued or gradually kind of way, and we need to be more empathetical, more adaptive to the contextual requirements. These are the new imperatives of the global paradigm of growth, and this will not, the old way of doing things or old way of governance, this is which I keep talking about it. The new imperatives will have to be restrictive, whether they are because of technology, because of globalization, because of very many things which are changing, and they're changing very fast. But it's not the bureaucracy, Doctor. My take is that there is a serious bottleneck of capacity, bottleneck to understand the contextual nuances of policy making at the political level, where the policy is actually made. You rightly said what happens actually is policy is announced in advance. We are given a handout. I'll give you one example of free electricity to farmers in Punjab. When in 1997, this decision was taken in the first Council of Ministers meeting headed by Mr. Prakash Singh Badal. He just gave a diktat. There was no proposal, there was no examination, nothing was on the table. He said, no, we have made this commitment, we have made this announcement, the policy is done. In next 24 hours, the notification should be out. And notification was issued. So this is the way policy is made. So no bureaucrat had any chance to even look at the proposal. What were the financial implications? Whether we had enough power to give it free, whether there is what kind of a requirement farmers have, and who all should be given. Today, every farmer in Punjab, small or big, they all get free electricity, and so much of water is wasted, so much of energy is wasted. As a result, there is depletion of natural resources, and agriculture operations are becoming unsustainable. So the policies, the way they should be made, bureaucrats can always bring in data and evidence. And typically, those data and evidence are not appreciated at the level at which they should be appreciated, because the digital literacy, the data literacy, there's lack of that, there is inadequacy of that at the policy making level, and we need to take some steps to improve the quality of policies in our country, or policy making in our country, to improve Arpit said, yes, we can have more courses on policy making, we can have for the youth. That's the next generation we need to deal with. But the generation which is in power, the generation which is making the policy making, they also need to upgrade their knowledge and information on policy making and policy making tools, and particularly the data and information which is available these days. Earlier, there was no data available. You rightly said MSME data was not available earlier. The technology enables you to access data, and we can always motivate the MSME promoters and industrialists to share information, create that confidence which we need to have.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. And, as far as, in democracy, there will be populist measures taken by whoever occupies, the government's chair. But that should be taken as part of the problem statement, that there will be these kinds of announcements, there will be subsidies, there will be freebies. Now, how do you work that into your economic model? Is something for us to look at, right? That how do you work that through? Free electricity, right? Free electricity. Obviously, it is getting misused. We need to have that data, right? That so much of somebody just turns on the pump and goes home. Let it flood the whole field. If we have all this data, then we can start segmenting and start looking at how do we do interventions which are meaningful. Still, populist measures can still exist. You still get freebies, but you get freebies that you deserve or that you need, not more than that. Not more than that, right? So that we can always, as you said, that if we have a chance, we can present it to the ruling parties and to the leaders, political leaders. I think that if we start making our case more and more forcefully, political leaders will have to listen. Political leaders are also elected by us only.
Yeah.
So
True.
Either they will have to listen, or the other alternative is that we have to give up our professions and go and fight elections with them. Okay, that enough of the nonsense. Something else needs to be done in this country, and that's an alternative too, right? But on a more serious note, even the younger generation political leaders seem to be thinking differently. There is far more educated way of taking decisions, and you see that in younger leaders in parliament, or even in some state governments. So I think this is generational change in mindset, and I'm very optimistic that we are moving in the right direction.
So that takes up another question before I ask Arpit to take up his part. The thing is that you said that this younger generation is more alive to the situation as it is emerging on technology, data, and policy making. In fact, the why we thought of these policy podcast was that we was getting the impression both through social media and other mediums that the youth today is talking of more of policy making and public policies than we ever had. In our times, when we were students and when we were young in the civil services, we never thought of public policies. To tell you the truth, the state I belong to and where I worked for 3 decades, we never discussed policies in as much detail as we are talking today. Why is that youth suddenly has become more alive to public policy making? Is there any specific reason for that? Is it because
availability of information? Availability of information, right? It's as simple as that. Today, you can type a few keywords and you can figure out what is the implication of policy X versus policy Y. Where could you do that before? Nowhere, right? So as you mentioned, when we were growing up, policy was something that somebody else made. God only knows where it came from, right? We didn't even have information about who makes these policies and on what basis. All you knew was downstream that, okay, this policy is for you. That's it, right? So, maybe it was even a hangover of the British Raj that, you are recipient of the policy, you have no say in it. Right?
Yes, we've always been recipient, and policies were always given as a handout or dictated to us. Just do it. And we were, most of our early days in service, or maybe half of our service was just doing it what we were told to do. In the later part of our service, we realized that no, policies need to be examined, data needs to be examined, evidence need to be gone through to conclude any policies. But unfortunately, even that is not as serious even now, when the AI and technology is gradually becoming more advanced. That policy should become more data-based, more evidence-based, more contextualized than really coming as a political ideology or political announcement.
Well, it is. As you can see that it is getting more and more informed by data. There are several, at least central government schemes, right? Direct bank transfer, beneficiary transfer, right? That's based on evidence, based on data. We discussed about COVID. At district level, things are happening which are based on data, right? Even NEP is based on a lot of data from, other kind of surveys that took place, right? Yeah. So more and more we are moving towards that, but it's the availability of information that has spurred the youth to think about these things today far more than the previous generations could, right? Information about what policy is going to impact your life in what way and what you can do about it. All of that on social media, on meaningful social media, is those debates are taking place, and at least something is sinking in, right? So our youth is certainly far more informed than any other generation was. And what you are seeing is the result of that they're questioning that, okay, what will happen because of this, or what will happen because of this policy of the government, and also they are reaching out to each other very quickly, right? throughout the world. So
But
that,
at the same
that
time,
community building.
the same time, Doctor, our youth is much more unemployed than they were before. This issue of educated unemployment and
Yeah.
the data, technology, science has changed the labor markets, the nature of labor markets, and the demands of the labor are different than the kind of labor which is available, the kind of people who are available for jobs. Now, this mismatch in the labor market, the skills which are available in the market are not really the skills required by the industry or other employers.
Right.
And this mismatch needs to be catered to, and this is a large responsibility and big responsibility for institutes and institutes of higher education in particular. So, how do you think Plaksha and other universities can tackle to this, that the skills you impart, the knowledge and information or education you impart meets the requirements of the market, and the youth becomes more employable and gets jobs? Unfortunately, this educated unemployed youth is going to be a serious problem in times to come, particularly in our country.
Actually, I wanted to piggyback on that question as well. Like geopolitically or geoeconomically, we see that one of the key offerings of India to the world is our IT sector. And do you think that, and our service sector is perhaps our largest engine of growth right now. So, do you think that our IT sector, given how AI and things are shaping, Microsoft and big companies are firing people everywhere, do you think our IT sector would be able to remain competitive a couple of, like a decade down the line, or are we going to see a crisis there?
My guess is, and I'm good that you're recording this, that our IT sector is going to be stronger 10 years later. It's going to be far more in demand. Why I'm saying that is that right now, obviously, there is a lot of churn which is happening, a lot of change that is taking place.
Yeah.
So that the traditional jobs that IT did, the mass scale employment was in lower level jobs, right?
Maintenance,
some programming, that kind of thing. That's going to go away.
Yes.
Very clearly, that's going to go away. But far more jobs are going to get created because now this computing or this IT is going to get into every single thing that there is, right?
Yeah.
Every single thing. And therefore, these IT folks with the right kind of retraining, so they also have to learn how to use AI more effectively, right? So if you are a programmer, and if you are an entry-level programmer, your jobs are gone. That doesn't exist.
For sure.
But if you are a really good programmer, you are going to be in such demand that you can't fulfill that demand.
Sure.
Okay? That's how it is going to be.
And to Mr. Kumar's question over here, that how do you fill that gap? Like in India?
Yeah, so I was just going to tell him, or I was going to respond by saying that when you say that there is so much of unemployability for educated youth, I would reframe that. I would say that there is a lot of unemployability for degree holders, not necessarily educated.
Okay, I agree.
We as universities, we meaning I'm talking about universities as a community in India or institutions, we have failed in our mission. There has been so little thought. I would say that 80% engineering colleges in this country should not exist. They have no business being engineering institutions. They know nothing about engineering.
If we had said it, then we will be in trouble.
They know nothing about engineering, and they are teaching and they're producing engineers. It's a blasphemy, I feel so pained with the kind of education that is provided in these engineering schools. They don't make engineers at all. So then how do you expect those engineering graduates to go and become employable? So, the quality wise, it's such a pain to look at the educational landscape of this country. It's such a pain. Anybody who thinks about it, and I know many of my colleagues who think about it deeply, you feel like crying. What are we doing to our youth? Right? And that's the reason why universities like Plaksha, there have to be many of them, many of them, many of them. It's
but Dr. Saab, how do we set that right? There's a question which we've been debating in the governments, and not many would agree, even in your university community or teaching community, that either the governments regulate that and try and see that the quality is what you should be imparting, quality education or quality engineering is what you should be teaching and giving this knowledge and information to the students, or the universities or the university communities should regulate themselves. Somebody has to wake up to this reality that the kind of engineering, kind of education we are delivering is not really producing these degree holders. You rightly use the term, I agree, that these degree holders, most of them are 80%, maybe more, are unemployable, and that's why they don't get the job. Those who have merit, they find the job in the domestic market as well as in the international market. So there is no dearth of job for those who have adequate skills, those who have the merit, those who are employable. But how do we see that most of the outputs are the graduates of institutes of higher education, whether private or public sector institutes? They are employable, they are given quality education, they are imparted skills which are in demand in the market. So how do we set the system right? Somebody has to kind of take the action, take some initiative to see that the things improve in future. Whatever has happened. We can't set that right. For future, some corrections have to be made.
Right. So one of the big reforms that we do need in the education sector in our country is that one size doesn't fit all. Okay. And that's what we have been doing so far. UGC has one regulation that applies to everybody. That doesn't do any good. Whenever you make a rule for everybody, basically, with Gaussian distribution, you are trying to cater to the mean. If the mean is so low, right, then you are trying to just police unnecessarily, and whoever are the good ones, you are holding them back. You have to make a tiered system, and you have to pay your attention differently to different segments, right? So you cannot have a single rule for everybody in education. Okay. There are lots of institutions that need to be taken to task. Okay. Now you don't frame rules. That's what we do. One idiot goes at 100 miles per hour on the road, and you put a speed bump for the 90%, 99% of people who are,
otherwise going fine.
Now everybody has to break their back on that speed breaker.
But using your figures, Doctor, in education, it's not one fool 10% harming the 90% in the transport sector, but in education, it's 20% quality institutions are getting harmed by 80% institutions.
Exactly.
We need to find a way out to reform.
Absolutely. So I would say that take that Gaussian distribution, segment it, and start framing rules differently for different people, right? And you say that, okay, this segment is performing well. We are going to incentivize them to do better and better. We are going to do this segment. They need help of a different kind. We need to put them on the right path. They need some nudging. We do that. This segment, which is lower, they are no good. We got to dismiss them all. Give them one chance and say that if you don't ship out, right?
I can share with you, as and when we discussed this issue while I was in government, we were always given one kind of a note of caution that let the market take care of it. Will the market actually be taking care of this, or this, the problem of degree holders and remaining unemployment or educated unemployment will continue to prevail? My take is that yes, markets do make corrections, but that takes longer. In a country like us, and the kind of problem and the problem is really quite large and quite big. In that sense, governments need to take some corrective actions, maybe in a layered fashion, tiered fashion, as you are suggesting, maybe in a much more pragmatic way, maybe leave it to the states, and states must wake up to the realities. But sooner we wake up to the realities, the better it would be. Otherwise, this issue of educated unemployment or unemployed degree holders will continue to bother us for a long time.
Yes. And when you said market forces are generally very good about such things, such corrections. But then it has to be a level playing field in the marketplace.
Right.
You can't have government institutions completely insulated.
That's
that no matter what they do, government will keep pumping money in them. Then it's not a fair play.
true.
Right?
That's true.
So you have to have a level playing field, and then you do this segmentation. That will be good. I'm all for it.
Good. Arpit, over to you.
So with that, I would like to thank you, Dr. Pratap. We covered a lot of ground, from education to employment to geopolitics, MSME. So thank you so much. Fascinating discussion, and we'd all look forward to how Plaksha is shaping up, and we really wish it all the best. I think our country's future, in a way, is intertwined with institutions like these. So thank you so much, and thank you for taking out the time for having this conversation with us.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Arpit. Thank you, Suresh ji. It
Always
was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye-bye.